Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. We are looking at Wednesday's NBA slate here. I've got a couple of early projections, some best bets running through about 4 of these games on the 9-game slate that we have here on Wednesday. Want to make sure that you are subscribed to that page and continue to follow along. We're going to have our live stream tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. here on the West Coast, 4:30 p.m. out there on the East Coast, and everything in between for you guys. So we're starting a little bit later than normal there on that live stream, but I did want to at least get some more people in there, and it seems like people can't really make it till at least about 4 p.m. Eastern. So we are going to get that going a little bit later. Appreciate you liking the video as well as always. Also going to actually drop final plays and best bets before the live stream tomorrow in a recorded video, and then go over a few more things in the live stream. We mix it up there and go over how we're making these bets just as much as we do make the bets, right? So I appreciate you guys that are coming in there, asking some great questions, throwing some props my way. Big shout out to Crack Sparrow, came out me with under 6.5 assists for SGA tonight, and we got there. I believe he had 5 as he ended the game, so we felt pretty good about the under 6.5 there. So want more of that from you guys. Really appreciative of it. Quick look at tomorrow's slate with the back-to-backs here. We got 9 games, like I said. On the back end tomorrow, Indy's going to be versus Chicago. They just played OKC here on Tuesday night. Really nice win for the Pacers, playing some defense against those Thunder on the road. And then Memphis, who beat Washington with all of their backups. Shout out Trey Jemison, had a huge game at center for them. They are also going to be playing Charlotte tomorrow in what could be the lowest scoring game of the season, even though the Knicks and the 76ers just played a 79-73 game the other night. Still have such a low projection for the total on that game. And then Sac had a really nice blowout win versus Milwaukee, who has been fooling us all, apparently, with their defense, because they do not look good right now on the defensive side of the floor, really on offense either tonight. But they're going to be playing the Lakers at home as well tomorrow. So the Lakers are going to be on the road. Sac's actually won 4 in a row against the Lakers when they play on the road. This one's at home versus the Lake Show on Wednesday night. Front end for a couple teams as well. Chicago will be playing Indy, as we just mentioned, and then they're going to take on the Clips at home here on Thursday night. Dallas is going to be playing Golden State. We'll be looking at that game here in a minute, and then they're actually versus a different team. I don't think they have 2 in a row versus Golden State. That's probably a typo, but I'll take a look at that in a sec with you guys. Portland's going to be taking on Atlanta at home in a really, really ugly game, and then they're going to be taking on the Knicks at home on Thursday night, one night later. So let's get into my first best bet and projections here for the first game we're looking at. Got to kick it off with a rematch of the finals, right? Where else would we start? No injuries here for the Nuggets, as they're going to have all their rotation players, and then the Heat will have Jimmy Butler. They won't have Tyler Hero or Kevin Love or Josh Richardson, and Caleb Martin will be available to play in that one. Low total of 214.5, and we have the Nuggets favored by 3.5 on the road. Don't love taking the Nuggets on the road in this sort of rematch of the finals, like we said, but let's look at some of the stuff here in the last 5 overall for these teams. Nuggets, like I said, last 5. Nuggets are 4-1, Heat are 2-3, and I'm going all the way down to that strength of schedule too, because it's way more impressive that the Nuggets are 4-1 in their last 5, playing the 8th hardest strength of schedule, whereas the Heat have had the 4th easiest strength of schedule and are only 2-3 in that time frame. Offensive ratings are nice for both these teams over their last 5. For the Nuggets here, we got them 2nd and the Heat 8th. The Nuggets, 23rd in defensive rating over their last 5, but they did sneak into the top 10 in terms of defensive rating on the season. So now we got them as one of, I believe, 4 teams that are in top 10 in terms of offensive and defensive rating on the season right now. And a quick spoiler for you, I went ahead and put down a nice little bet on them to win the chip at plus 460 on, I believe it's on DraftKings is where I have that ticket. I have a ton of tickets on, well, now I have 4 tickets on the Nuggets to win the chip, and it hasn't really gotten much better or worse than around plus 500 or so. So that's if it just, I think they're still right in a 7-game series. Like, you don't want to face this team now that they've got their defensive rating continuing to go back up, even though it's been bad over the last 5. They played some of the best teams in the league over the course of that time frame. So their pace is about 17th. For the Heat, surprisingly, 17th there for defensive rating, 21st, and 21st and pace is pretty normal for them. And they do play a little bit faster at home and have a better offensive rating at home, where they're playing in this one as well. I told you they have a bad strength of schedule. Last 4 meetings, can't do too much with it. It wasn't like everybody who plays for these teams this year was really around in the last couple seasons when they played, or even available for those games when they played in the regular season. But these totals have been around 223, 224 total for that in this matchup over the last 4. When you look at Denver's offense, that's what we're looking at here. Everything here is Denver's offense and Heat defense. Effective field goal percentage for these Nuggets, they have been incredible. They're themselves right now. They're one of the best passing teams in the league, best effective field goal percentage. The Heat have been giving up some shots and some made shots, 18th in terms of defensive field goal effective percentage there. And then the rim frequency for the Nuggets, they are attacking the rim. Guys like Aaron Gordon been getting a ton of dunks over the course of the last 5 games, hugely because Nikola Jokic has also been diming up a ton. So they are first in rim frequency. The Heat are getting attacked at the rim, the 5th most, but they are doing a good job of defending it. 4th best rim field goal percentage. And the Nuggets, when they get to all the way to the rim, not quite as good, but you also have to look at the paint stuff for them. I didn't put it up here, but for the Nuggets, when they get into the paint and not necessarily all the way to the rim, they're deadly because they've got a couple of nice floaters from guys like Jamal Murray. And they also have Nikola Jokic with his baby hook and everything that he does right outside the restricted area, right next to the rim, but not quite dunking it or getting all the way to it. Doesn't really need to, right? He's just got such a nice touch from everywhere inside like 7 feet. But the mid-range game has also been really going smoothly for the Nuggets as their passing has been really good. They've seen a nice uptick in their mid-range, both the frequency and field goal percentage. They're second most, and they're making it with the best field goal percentage there. And the Heat are a little bit more vulnerable. I mean, they're still a good defensive team most places on the floor, and there's really not anybody, God bless you, Bam, who's going to be giving up so much size to Joker in this one. There's not really anybody that takes Joker's shots away from him from wherever he is. He can get to his spots. That's why they won the championship with ease last year, and it's why I do think that they're likely to win this game. It's just I trust them more in April, May, and June than I do in March because it's still the regular season. So we'll see about the spread there. But the transition stuff, they don't get out into transition very much. They love their half court offense in Denver, and the Heat are really good at getting back and limiting those points per possession. That's what the 3 Ps there mean at the bottom in terms of limiting the other teams what they want to do when they get out off of the break. If you look at the Heat here on offense rather, and the Nuggets on defense, the Heat do have the 10th best effective field goal percentage, and they are getting to the rim a decent amount and scoring when they get there. But the Nuggets haven't had quite as much rim protection, but they are limiting teams in terms, or I'm sorry, they are allowing teams to come into the paint, and then they're not necessarily doing as good of a job of stopping them once they get all the way to the rim. But like we see here, it's not like it's that big of a deal if teams aren't actually attacking the basket all the way to the rim as often as they might want. And the Heat do rely on corner threes a lot. And as you can see here, number 1 in corner 3 frequency. And then the corner 3-point percentage for them as well, 8th best on the season, or over the last 5, I should be specific. So that is something that like you kind of think they could, if the Nuggets are a little bit more vulnerable like this from there, it might be an advantage for the Heat with the ability to score from there. And they don't get out in transition either, and the Nuggets do a good job of getting back on transition as well. I have a lean here, which is over 214.5, but this might even go down. I do think people in the public especially are going to be on the idea that the Heat, especially in their home building, are going to be a little bit better on defense against the Nuggets. But in reality, they score a bunch more points per game at home than they do on the road. Their games at home average about 226, 227 for the Heat here. And with the Nuggets coming in playing so well on offense, like I think they're going to be good to get the 115 or so that we need to feel, or I'm sorry, 110 at least that we'd feel that they need to get this thing going. It's really about efficiency because neither of these teams are going to get into transition. So as long as they're both efficient on offense the way they have been as of late, I do think that this is good. This will be good. I'll check back with you in the morning. I'm going to have a video with those final plays, including something about this one probably at that time. If not, we'll cover it on the live stream. So make sure that you check those out as well. All right, another game I have an early bet for here is the Nets and the Magic. Taking a look at this one, everybody's going to be pretty healthy there for the rotation players, at least available to play for everybody there, which is always a somewhat of a surprise when you see it for the Magic with everybody that's usually injured for them, including the guards. But we're gonna have both Jalen Suggs and Markelle Fultz back. In the last 5 for these teams, just overall here, 2 and 3 for the Nets, 3 and 2 for the Magic. Both have played really bad teams over the course of their last 5. So I know the Magic would like to have won one of those games that they lost. And the Nets they're losing to teams like Charlotte and Detroit, right? And giving up those wins to teams that wouldn't otherwise be able to beat many other teams. Their offensive rating is 13th, their defensive rating 15th there for the Nets. The Magic have come back to earth on offense big time, back down to the 27th offensive rating over their last 5, but still third best defensive rating, both playing super slowly. You see this 205.5 total, going to be one of the smaller ones on the night. And then when these two teams have faced in the last 3 meetings, which have all been this season, this is their 4th and final one, averaging about 215 in those games. So there have been some weird in and out of the lineups, like Caleb Houston started one of these matchups versus the Nets. So it's not like we've had their full culmination of guys, but the overs in this series this season have been in Brooklyn, whereas at Orlando, especially because Orlando held them to 81 points, I believe, the other night in a 108-81 thrashing of the Nets when they were in Orlando. So we'll see what happens in this one, but I want to look at the offense here for the Nets versus this defense for the Magic. They're both really good in terms of the effective field goal percentage. The rim frequency, you see that the Nets are going to the rim a ton, but they have not played this Magic team, which limits teams from even getting in all the way to the rim. As you can see, the 5th most rim field goal attempts that the other teams are taking against them. And the rim field goal percentage, pretty good, 13th for them. It's actually a bit better than it was over the course of like the last 10 or so. They've actually improved a bit on their rim field goal percentage. And the mid-range would be where the Nets would have an advantage if the Magic are unable to get out and guard. Guys like Franz and Paolo are going to be huge to sort of come up from their positions down low, playing in the bottom of that, really when they not necessarily play zone, but in terms of like trying to keep those guys a little bit closer to the basket so that they do have a bit more rim protection with their big wings like Franz and Paolo. But that is a big reason why the mid-range frequency and the mid-range field goal percentage has been pretty good for them, because these guys are getting out and doing that and D'ing up, which is a bad matchup for the Nets, which is why that in isolation, when you look at this Magic defense, they're really good because they have really good individual defenders, and so they limit teams in terms of the ISO ball, which is what the Nets want to play a ton on offense when they have Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges out there, especially. Dennis Schroeder has improved their ability to shoot from up top. He has actually been really good for them from up top, and Cam Thomas loves to shoot that above the break 3 as well. That's why you see them shooting it so frequently as of late and with such a good percentage, which is why their offensive rating is decent, is mostly because of their ability to shoot the 3 pretty well over their last 5. But I don't think that's something that they're going to have quite as available to them in this one. In terms of the way that the Magic play defense above the break, they've been bad at times, but if they're able to get out and guard, I think they will be in like they did last game, then they should be in line to be able to limit this team. Transition frequency, you're not going to get it that often from the Nets. They play a lot of half-court ball despite having a lot of short, small lineups out there at time. And then the Magic are really good at limiting points per possession when teams do try to get out in the break against them. Looking at the Orlando offense versus the Brooklyn defense, the effective field goal percentage for the Magic over their last 5, everything sort of dropped, like we said. The big thing that for them and why there might be some points in transition for the Nets is if they're able to get turnovers, which they have been to the tune of the second best defensive turnover percentage over their last 5 versus the Magic, who have the second most turnovers, basically the second highest turnover percentage, not the second most necessarily because they play at such a slow pace, so there's fewer possessions, but the rate at which they turn the ball over is the second worst over their last 5. And that is why points off of turnovers have been a thing for the Nets, 10th most in that time span. Still not necessarily where you'd want it to be with how often they're turning teams over. And the Magic have done a good job of getting back, only allowing the 16th most points off of those turnovers despite turning it over so frequently, right? And that is because the turnover percentage, when you play so slowly for the Magic, obviously then the turnover percentage is higher, but because there's fewer possessions per game for them, the total amount of points off of those turnovers still going to be a little bit lower for them since they're not even turning it over that much, just the rate at which they're doing it. So the rim frequency and for them is something else I like in terms of their ability to score against this Nets team. They're getting to the rim a lot, and the defensive rim field goal percentage for the Nets not been that good of late and really on the season. There was a time where they were a team that they were a lot more formidable down low earlier in the season, got rid of some guys, and Nick Claxton had some troubles, and now he hasn't been quite as good on defense, honestly, around the rim either. It's a huge reason for them giving up a decent amount of those, and they have been giving up fouls. Second best free throw rate for the Magic is going to be something to look at here in terms of the opponent free throw rate for the Nets, which has been bad. And in transition, not really anything to talk about there because neither of these, like the Magic don't get out in transition. And the Nets, while they're not great defending it, they probably won't have to worry about that too often with the Magic here. But I do think the Magic, I don't have any respect for the Nets. Like if you've watched this show in the past, all season, like I've probably trashed the Nets if I'm talking about them. It's not good. And I don't mean to, I love my boy Kevin Ollie because I'm a UConn fan, always have been, grew up in Connecticut. But that doesn't mean that like I think he's a good basketball coach. It didn't work out for the Huskies. I don't know that it's going to continue to work out in the NBA, where he's been an assistant coach for like every team, and has had now, I think this is his second head coaching gig, and the first one didn't go so great either. So either way, I like everything I said in there with the free throw rate for the Magic, their ability to attack the basket and defend the basket on the other side, and the painted area as well. I think it's a huge reason for why they're going to take this game, even with the 6.5 points. I would hit this one because I could only see it going further in the direction of the Magic here. Next up, we're looking at the Mavs. They are hosting the Dubs here, -7.5 now. It opened at -6.5. No real players of injury of importance that are injured other than Steph Curry, who is a majorly important player, and his absence is going to be the reason for the early bet that I have for this team here. In terms of the last 5 for these teams, 2 and 3 for the Dubs, 3 and 2 for the Mavs. But for the Dubs here, that offensive rating should actually say 22nd, not second. 22nd offensive rating over their last 5, 23rd in defensive rating. The Mavs have been basically as bad on defense, but they have had the best offensive rating over their last 5. Both these teams played some pretty doo-doo teams over their last 5 as well. Pretty easy strength of schedules for them both. Both playing pretty fast, but I will say, even though the Dubs are at that first overall offensive pace in the last 5 games, now we're talking about Chris Paul at the helm and not Steph Curry. And Curry was in for 3 of those games where that pace was up pretty high. And now he's not. And that's a huge difference that we'll talk about here in one sec as well. These two teams do score a lot of points because of the pace that they normally play at. Basically averaging, what do we have here? Like basically 242 or so, 241 and a half, 242 in terms of the total points scored between these two teams in the last 4 meetings, including earlier this season. But once again, we had Steph Curry. So that's going to be a huge thing that I'm looking at here when I bring up the Warriors offense and dive into it a little bit more deeply. Their effective field goal percentage is meh, right? It's bottom half of the league. Mavs have actually been decent limiting effective field goal percentage for their opponent, but the rim frequency and the rim field goal percentage, while they're it's good that they're best for the Dubs, right? In the league, they have been efficient going to the rim. Neither of these teams are really getting all the way to the rim, as you can see, for the way that, well, at least I'll show you that for the Mavs in a second. For the Dubs, that's been the case. They're shooting a lot of threes above the break. Even with Chris Paul in there, they're still going to get a bunch of those up because they're going to have Klay Thompson shooting from up there. And the way that they move around in that offense is going to be still pretty much the same. It's except for it's not as much Chris Paul running around screens to come get the ball like it would be if Steph was there. They're not getting into transition very often for the Dubs, even though they have been playing fast. They're really just getting it and going off of not off of made baskets, but when they're able to get turnovers, and that still hasn't been something that they've been doing too often, as we see here. For the Mavs, they don't really need to worry about how bad they've been in limiting the transition points there, because we probably won't see it very much from this Dubs team with Chris Paul in there as opposed to Steph Curry. For the other side of the ball with the Mavs offense, we're talking about them being 4th best in terms of effective field goal percentage. I do think they're going to be able to make some shots in this game. It seems high for this number for the Dubs, even without Steph Curry. But, honestly, like if the Mavs get hot from 3, that's something you can see there with the above the break 3 stuff. If they get hot from 3 with how often they're shooting, which is second most in the league behind this Boston Celtics, the Dubs are not a good 3-point defense. They haven't been all season, and they certainly haven't been over their last 5. And the Mavs are pretty efficient when they run into transition, 9th most transition points per possession, and the Dubs are letting teams get in the transition 22nd, which means the 9th most in the league. So for this one, I am going to go under in this game, and I took it for half a unit, under 237.5. I could see that going up as well, so I was happy to get this bet in early. You look at the Warriors with and without Steph this season, 120 points per game with 100.5 pace with him, and that's in 59 games versus the 5 games they play without him now. And in those 5, though, 110 per game, 99.7 pace. And that's not just because Steph Curry is so good at offense. It's also because Chris Paul is a much slower point guard in terms of how he wants to run things than Steph Curry. So I've got to run with that, knowing that, the other thing that I did want to mention real quick, besides Chris Paul slowing the pace down, the defensive free throw attempt rate for the Dubs has been really good. They've been limiting free throws a lot. Dallas has been trying to get to the line a lot more over the course of their last 5, 8th best free throw attempt rate. So that is something that Luka's always going to be trying to draw fouls, obviously, and even Kyrie has been able to do that as well. But if the Dubs are able to stamp that out and stomp it out, then yeah, I think this is a really good under here, as I make this one much closer to like 232.5, 230. Next up and final game we're looking at here, we got Man, I've called a couple games the duty bowl, but the way these Raptors are playing, and honestly, that's not fair to the Pistons, as they've been all right, winning 2 of their last 3, or last 5 rather. But for the Raps here, Scotty Barnes out, Jakob Poeltl out. I mean, they're giving up, man. RJ Barrett out, Chris Boucher out, Emmanuel Quickly and Gary Trent are both questionable. For these Pistons, at least they're still going for it, winning some games here at the end. They are 2.5-point favorites. Oscar Thompson's questionable, but that's it. 233.5 because these teams play fast. So looking at the last 5, like I said, 2 and 3 for the Pistons. Raptors did get a win in there, 1 and 4, but their offensive rating has been awful. Their defensive rating has been worse. And the pace for both these teams, third and fourth. And so I do think that, it'll stay that way. There's no reason to think it's going to slow down, but we need to see if Emmanuel Quickly and Gary Trent are going to be in there. They're too important to this offense in a way that, like, if they're not in, I don't trust very many, if anybody, to score for this Raptors squad, which would make you go to even 233.5, despite the lack of defense that these teams are playing. Right, 19th defensive rating for the Pistons, 27th for these Raptors. Despite all of that, it still doesn't really feel like the opportunity for either team to score will be as well, at least for the Raptors. Like, I don't know that they'll come along for the ride. I don't know how they're going to score 110 points even if they don't have even Emmanuel Quickly and Gary Trent in there for them. So that's what I'll keep an eye on. The last 4 meetings, not going to put too much stock into that fact that it's been 255.5 totals or so, because of the fact that, like I said, that a lot of different players in that one. Even earlier this season, we had guys that were still playing for the Raptors that are not on the team anymore. I think Bruce Brown might have been in-house already, but either way, it's a much different looking team here overall. So let's look at the offense for the Raptors, which is, I don't want to take much time to do that. They have been pretty effective going to the rim. And attacking the rims. Guys like Bruce Brown are going to continue to have to get into the lane and try to get all the way to the basket. They continue to play a lot in transition, as they always have, dating back to last season, where even if they're not getting out into the fast break that often, they're going into transition consistently in terms of not really trying to set up an offense, but just getting it and going, even off of made baskets. So despite the fact that Detroit's got the second worst effective field goal percentage on defense over their last 5, I just don't trust Toronto to score, especially without Emmanuel or Gary Trent. So we got to wait to see what's up with them. But everything for the Pistons hasn't been great on defense, to be honest with you. It's not like I really trust them too much. I'm just giving them mostly home court advantage in this one. It's mostly what I look at more than anything. Their offense has been somewhat anemic as well, but they are trying to get into the paint a lot. And without Jakob Poeltl, this Toronto's Raptors defense is almost non-existent, right? It's just really, really bad. So I'm definitely going to lean towards the Pistons here in this one. That is the final best bet of the night that I've got early up here for you. -2.5 for them is what you can still get. I've got -3 here, but you can get some -2.5s. Hopefully that's still around. I would play it at -3, so at least I put that up there for you, but I am taking that -2.5 because I got there early, -110 on FanDuel, and that is all the time I have for you guys. Quick reminder to subscribe to the page. Hopefully you have been looking at that ticker there on the bottom. My bad. And you can see that we're going to have that live stream here at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Going to start it, that should be on Wednesday. Apologies. Getting my days mixed up still from being in New Zealand a week ago. Either way, we also have college basketball up, conference tournaments start. Make sure you check those out with Oaks. And until I see you next, happy betting.